thousand seasons, and never give up all its reasons. This new day calls your name. Light up the day with love. We'll find a way as one. Across the world our lives unfold. We're here together. Every moment now, a song to sing out loud. Every road we find, we climb. We are
Muted. Okay. Hi. Well, here I am again at, is this number 4, I think? And I'm still learning how to do this. And I still need Gretchen at the background to tell me that, hey, you're muted, you're not live yet. Are you doing this? Just, it's okay. And I'm very grateful for her to be helping out at the back. All right, so what did you all think of last week's lesson? Hi, everybody. Hi, James. Hi, honey. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Noel. What did you all think? Give me some comments at the bottom, and to tell me what you think about last week. Last week we talked about how Gary Young went to Ecuador and how he was trying to help the town, and somebody went to him with a machete. His name is Panchito, and he still now works at our farm, right? Hi, Bill, again. Thank you for tuning in every week. Okay, today we're going to be continue to be talking about Ecuador and what happened when he was in Ecuador. We're going to be talking about the academy, and then we're going to be talking about the Novafita Wellness Center, and then we're going to be talking about copycats. All right, let me see. I have a ton of stuff opened on my computer, and I am trying. Let's see. All right, okay, I'm ready to go. Okay. I don't know how people can do this so quickly. Oh my goodness. This doesn't work. All right, let's see. I need to learn how to do this better. Okay. All right. So, all right, that's what we're doing. I need to find some clarity. I'm gonna put some clarity on. Oh, there we are. Okay. Let me put some clarity on. Okay. Have you put your oils on? Put some oils on and then tell me in the comments what you put, okay? All right. All right, I'm gonna talk about Nicole, you're diffusing genius. Oh, I need that. I should be using that, okay. Thank you for reminding me. I've got some genius right here. I love this set. Have you got this set? It has everything. Well, the purple one is next to my bed. I love this. So I'm gonna put some genius on here, right? I like to put it like this. So the Young Living Academy. It is now, I think, at its 15th year, if I remember correctly. It has provided education for 350 students. I'll give you a little bit of the background, how it was started, and now all of, since 2009, so it's been 14 years since the school has been developed, established, and we've had first graduate in 2016. So there have been 5 years of graduation. And the wonderful thing is the children in this Shongon village usually do not get a proper education like what we're providing at the Young Living Academy. And I'll give you a bit of the background. So when Gary bought the farm in Ecuador, he was driving by. Every day he would drive to the farm to work on building the farm, and he would drive by this dilapidated little building. And he had no idea what it was. He drove by, he couldn't read Spanish. And once in a while, he would see children like this playing on the street. You can see that this is a dirt road. And every time when we drove by, if it's dry, if it's sunny, it would get super dusty. When it's wet, when it's raining, which is also often, it would be very muddy. And then the water would splash onto the side of the road. And one day, Gary just was very curious, and he stopped his truck and he looked through these little holes, and he could see children being in class, and there's a teacher standing in the front, and these children were mixed age. There wasn't one age group of children. So he figured this is probably the school of the village, and he felt this is not the kind of environment that children should be growing up in and learning. And later on, he found out that it's actually people who are volunteering to teach the children. It's not actually a proper school, and there's no curriculum per se. So he felt that he wanted to build a school. So he went home and he told Mary about it. He says, Mary, we have to build a school. And Mary was like, huh? As if you don't have enough on your plate. Are you crazy? Because he's building a farm in Ecuador, and he was also always traveling to the Middle East to search for frankincense. Then he also had the farm in Mona and in St. Marie's, right? So back then, it felt like, well, it is a lot of work. And to build a school, you know what it entails to build a school. You need to build a school, you need to find teachers, you need to come up with a curriculum and all of that. But to him, it was a purpose that he had to do, he said. But he goes, okay. He wasn't going to argue with his Mary, right? So, and then after a while, one day, he was still driving past this school every day. And one day he asked Mary, hey, Mary, come with me. I want to show you something. And Mary was like, I don't know what he's up to this time, right? And then so Gary drove here and stopped and asked Mary to look. And Gary was standing in one of these holes and looking through the holes into the house. And indeed, there were children taking classes. And Mary also came over and took a look. And then God, I remember he said maybe it was God's design. And God's design, a big truck drove by, and the sand and the dust just flew onto the mountain. And the audio is breaking up. Is the audio breaking up? If it is, let me know, okay? And then all the sand and the dust flew into the house and through the other side, right? And of course, the kids would be coughing, and it would be very dusty. Everything gets dirty. You can actually see on the floor here, it's very dusty. And so Mary looked at Gary and said, now, what are you standing here for? Aren't you going to go build a school now? So there was the green light. So Gary built a school. And Gary drew up the blueprints, as if you had seen the video that Mary talked about, Gary drawing blueprints for our new headquarters. So this is the blueprint, and he designed it. I remember in the beginning, it was just one level. Yeah. And then later on, he built the second level. Yeah. So when he first started building it, it was just first level. And I went to visit myself. This is my own photo. This is a photo that I took. When I got there in 2013, they just built this nursery. Okay. This nursery was just built. And this is the photo from the Seed to Seal book, as I always tell everybody about. This is the seed from the Seed to Seal book. So he started building the school. And then he also, other than building the school, he also made sure that I need to talk about this. So he started building the school, and he started getting children to go to the school from the village. He started with the farm workers. He started with the children of the people who were working at the farm. And because he was already building the farm, and the farm was 2,000 acres, right? So there were a lot of children who came from the families of the workers. And you have to make sure that, and I wanted to make sure that I let you know that all our farmers in our farm in Ecuador are paid. I remember he told us that they are paid as a US salary amount. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people needed to make sure that they're not underpaid, because the salary in Ecuador is much lower. But he was making sure that they were paid from, hi, Francis. He was making sure that they were paid according to what they usually pay in Young Living. Okay, so he wanted to make sure that they were well paid. And if you well pay your workers, they actually can become very loyal, right? Okay, and so when he built the school, in the beginning, it was just one level. And they used the brick. Remember the brick factory in Ecuador farm, where he imported the brick factory from Africa, from South Africa? That was the brick factory that helped build the school. And then one day, there were a lot of trucks and a lot of men who came to the farm at the gate and holding guns and saying that they have to break down the gates and they have to take out Gary, and then they want Gary to leave. They were telling them, you have to leave, you American, you leave our land, you leave our land, you leave our land, like that, right? And because they had guns with them, Mary was very worried, and they had Jacob and Joseph in the house. So Gary went out there and tried to reason with them and talk to them. And Gary had his gun with him. He took his gun, and Gary went out there and talked to them and tried to reason with them, but they were not there to reason. They would keep cheering, saying, leave our land, you're American. We don't want you here. We don't want you here. And they were getting very rowdy. And so Gary had his assistant call the police, and then got the police. The police came, but the police also came to take Gary away because his gun was not registered in Ecuador. Later on, he got that sorted out with a lawyer and with the government. It was all fine. Don't worry about that part. And then that day, he needed to find out who orchestrated the whole coup, right? It was as if they were telling them to leave. And Gary had a meeting with his workers and with the village mayor. Is that what we call it? Like the head of the village. And they had a meeting with all the villagers. And eventually he found out that it was one man who wanted Gary to leave. And because he didn't understand what they were actually doing there. And Gary tried to explain. And Gary said, okay, if you don't want me here, we can leave and I will close the school. And turned out that guy, the man who wanted to send them away, was one of the father of the kids who were going to the school. So everybody else started begging Gary to stay and started telling him how sorry they are. They didn't understand. Gary said, I'm here to give you jobs. I'm here to build a school so that your children can have a proper education, so that they can have a good future. And I'm here to give you jobs, to teach you how to earn a living, I'm here trying to make a better living for the village, for all of you. Why do you want me to leave? If I leave, I can leave, but I will bring the school with me. I will have to close the school, because if we leave, nobody's going to be here running the school. So all the families, all the mothers, other fathers, they realize what a big mistake it is. And they begged Gary to stay, and they apologize. And then the man who actually started all of this realized what a big mistake it is and apologized to Gary. And begged him to stay. So Gary decided to stay. And I think if anybody in the same situation, it would be very scary with all the guns and all the people and all the upheaval, right? But Gary stayed to his truth. He put his foot down. He knew what he was doing, right? And I remember when I was there in 2013, the gate was still locked and there were still like armed guards with guns standing out front. And this was the reason why, because there were times when there were people who wanted them to leave and they didn't understand what Gary was there to do. Anyway, so eventually it was all settled and they continued with the school. and the children continue to study there. And it is, Gary used to tell us that it is American curriculum. And it's actually, I think it's it's American private school curriculum. Let me put it that way. It's not the public school curriculum. So, hi, Katie. And then, so they continued with the education, and Gary actually hired a teacher from the US to plan and design the curriculum, which is a great curriculum because I'm going to tell you a little bit later. And other than the school, other than the education, because Gary is the kind of person that I think if you notice for Young Living Foundation, Gary is not the kind of people who just want to donate money and then give money to the people and then forget about it. He is the kind of guy that wants to teach people how to fish so that they can learn how to fish and then eventually teach their family and the descendants how to fish and then earn a living for themselves, right? That is what Gary had done in Ecuador, in Nepal, and in a lot of different countries. So when you go to the Young Living Foundation website, you can see that all of our programs, all of our cooperation programs, all of the programs that Young Living Foundation supports are there to teach people how to earn their own living and be independent. A lot of it has to do with education. A lot of it has to do with protecting women and children and teaching women how to earn a living and be independent financially. And also, other than education, another part of growing up that children's life is diet, right? Gary understands how important it is for food, for the diet, for the children. And he also knew that a lot of the children came from poor family, broken families, or parents with addiction problems. Sorry, there's a typo here, with addiction problems. And he knew that many of the children do not have access to good, nutritious food. And it is so important to be healthy and for the brain development to have healthy, nutritious food. So he grew a farm, and then he grew bananas. And these are photos that are taken, and I've eaten in this restaurant. This is the photo of the restaurant. Remember, last week I showed you the photo of the restaurant. It's perched on top of the lake, and then there are kitchen staff, and these are the pineapples and the bananas, and these are cocoa. So, this page is a little bit off. I should be showing you the food. And I've got photos of me eating there in the restaurant. So the farm actually hire a lot of staff because there's kitchen staff, there's workers in the nursery, there's workers in the engineering room for repair the trucks and everything. Yeah, so it's very, very good. It's very well planned. And for the Young Living Academy, that's actually how the D. Gary Young Foundation started. It's actually called the D. Gary Young Living Foundation. And all the students from the academy are welcome to go to the farm after school, and they play jet ski in the lake, swim in the swimming pool, and the jacuzzi and the school bus. Remember last week I showed you the photo of this pool and the jacuzzi and the photo of the farm. And then actually every day after school, there's a school bus that takes the children to the farm. And so that there's a safe place for them to do homework together and to study and to play, to have fun while they're waiting for their parents to be done with their work and to pick them up and to go home. And also, in a lot of international school curriculum, the ninth grader encouraged to learn internship. So in Young Living Academy, this also is the curriculum, how the curriculum is planned. All the ninth graders are invited to intern at the farm in an area of their own choice. They can work in the lab, they can work on the farm, they can work in the nursery, in the school, at the clinic, at the wellness center, or in the kitchen, or in the brick factory, or as a mechanic. So it gives the children an idea of how real life work is about, right? So after that, when they're in 10th grade and 11th grade, they can actually focus on whether they want to go on to the science subjects or the art subjects or the liberal arts subjects, etc. And that is really, really good curriculum. And in fact, there are, let's see, in 2014, construction of the covered amphitheater began. And sorry, I need to read this properly. I can't really see this. The first graduate is a graduate of 12 students. I know this is Angel. Well, his name is Angel. I think in Spanish it is pronounced as Angel. And he now works at the wellness center because he said he wants to be a doctor. And he has been interning there. And I think he's also going to college, to university, and he's working part-time there to learn and gather his experience. You can easily find him on Facebook. He loves to dance. And I remember when I was there, they had the children perform for us, and he's a great dancer. It was very enjoyable to watch him dance. And so when we were at the Gold Platinum retreat currently, actually, when we were in the Platinum retreat, we were invited to visit the academy, and they would have the children welcome us, and they would have the children perform for us, and we can meet the children that we sponsor, and we can talk to the families, and it is really such a blessing. And many of these children actually came from broken families. I'm going to show you their living conditions in a moment. We're very poor, probably never had work, and Gary wanted to provide them for a real opportunity to get a really good education and to serve and give back to the community in the future. So these are photos taken from the book and from the children graduating. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think over 90% of the children eventually went on to university and have a graduation degree. Those who did not was of choice of their own. And a lot of them get into university with a what do you call it, a subsidized and a scholarship. Yes, that's what you call it in English, a scholarship. And in fact, before the Young Living Academy, the education rate and the rate of that village, the people who can go to college, is under 10%. Now it's over 80%. The Young Living Academy itself is going to change the lives of the people in that village, in the Chongon village. Can you imagine doing that, like for the change for the rest of their lives? It's sort of like how I always think that with us using Young Living products now and understanding all these things about natural health and bringing up our children that way, and our second generation Young Living users, right? Third generation Young Living users, fourth generation Young Living users, we're going to be changing their lives and their health for the rest of our lineage. It's incredible what we're doing right now. And I remember this is the photo that I took by myself. I remember watching Gary, and when we were in the farm, like when we were going to visiting the academy, they had all the children lined up and welcome us. And as I showed you in the last video, I think you've seen it, they had all the children lined up in the academy to welcome us. We got to meet the children that we sponsor through the Young Living Academy. And then they had the kids perform for us. And I remember, you see the tent at the back, and they line up chairs in the front and then benches at the back. And the chairs were for the VIPs, right? Gary and Mary and the executives of the company. And everybody was coming and sitting down, and there was a chair in the middle reserved for Gary. And I remember Gary said, no, this is a performance for you. You are their VIP. You are the reason why we have the school. If it weren't for the members, if it weren't for the distributors, we would not have been able to have the money to build the school. So this is your school, and this is a performance for you. So he refused to sit in the middle. He wanted all the distributors, all the members, all the leaders to sit in the front row. And he just sat on the side, and I remember he sat on the floor, and he was just watching the children perform. And they had children from the primary school and from the secondary school perform. And this was a photo taken when he was watching the performance, and he was very touched watching these children grow up and what they could do. And it is really, really very incredible what I saw there. And I was very, very touched. And all of us had tears in our eyes, what the foundation and the academy did for the children. And the children were so happy. And I remember they were so excited to see Gary, and they all loved him so much. And a lot of them called him Daddy Gary. And they all look at him like his father, and Gary treated them like his own children. And when you see these families, how grateful they are, it's really, really touching. This was the year I went there twice. So it was the year before I went to the Lavender French Farm. So I already had, this was actually, I think, the first year of how I saw the charity work that he has done, the integrity of him and how the people treat him. And note that these people, they all speak Spanish, and Gary did not speak Spanish. He could say hola, and he really wasn't very good with languages. And however, you could still see how grateful these people are to him. And that really, really touched me. And that really told me a lot about this man. All right. Okay. So, and I want to show you, these are photos that were taken from our leaders when they went to their platinum retreats. When I was there, we couldn't do family. There was no arrangement for family home visits. And when our leaders were there, they could do home visits for the children that they sponsored for the academy. And in order to sponsor a child, it is $75 per month. I urge all of you to go onto the Young Living Foundation and sponsor a child, because the more we sponsor, the more children that will be able to go to the school. And this includes, in fact, if I remember correctly, $75 actually isn't enough to provide for one child. Young Living Foundation still subsidize, but it helps out, okay? And these are the living conditions of the families that my leaders were going to visit. This is the kind of houses that they live in. You can either choose to sponsor a child, or you can do donation of any amount and one time, or you can do a monthly roundup. In fact, the monthly roundup in our Young Living ER orders, or any quick order, any ER order, you can see that there's a button next to our process now, the order, like click yes or something, place order. And then you can actually choose to round up your order to the next dollar. If you round up to the next dollar, it feels very little, right? It's like 20 cents maybe. Usually it's 25 cents. Because most of our products are on the like 25 cents, 75 cents, 50 cents, like that, right? So it's like 11.75, 10.25. So usually if you round it up, it will not even be $1. But can you imagine? I heard that there are 10 million Young Living members now worldwide. If everybody donates 50 cents each month, we'll have $5 million. Well, consider that if we do have because our worldwide retention rate is about 50% monthly. So imagine half of that million members, it's 5 million members. If everybody donate 50 cents, it's still $2 million every month of donation. Can you imagine how much money that can do? So it's really incredible. I urge you all to go to the Young Living Foundation website and to donate, or to look more about it, to read about it, and to round up your order every month. That will really, really help a lot of people. If you donate, you can actually choose which program you want to donate to, or just any program. Okay. Give me some likes, give me some heart. If you're going to donate, and look at the Young Living Foundation website, give me some reactions. Okay. Thank you. And these are also other photos that were taken from our leaders. The house, they actually had to block off all the sunlight with the cardboard boxes that you can see. And it's obviously very hot, and they have to cook in here, and it's very hot in Ecuador, especially in the summer, which is our December, November, December, and January. Well, Ecuador is actually on the equator, so it's hot, super hot year round. And then this is the kind of toilet that they have to go to. This is the bare mirror that they have. And this is usually a family of 4 to 6 people, and this is how they live. And can you imagine these children being born in a family like this, in an environment like this, but being able to go to have an education of the Young Living Academy, and then went on to graduate, to go to university and find a good job, and then come back and service the community and help the community becoming better. Isn't that incredible? That's not something that one person can do. That is something that a lot of people can do together, right? And so that is all about the Young Living Academy. I feel really, really blessed to be able to be part of the Young Living Academy and to be able to sponsor children and to be able to go and visit them. And if you ever have the chance, I mean, we all need to become platinums and so that you can go and visit the school. It's also actually open to everybody who would like to go to Ecuador. In the US, if you want to fly down to Ecuador, you can fly either to New York or to Miami. Miami is easier. If you go to direct flight to, what is the city? Not Quitos, but, oh gosh, I forgot. There's the big city that is next to the farm, 2 hours drive from the farm. Not Quitos, but I'll come up with a name, or somebody in the comment can help me. The closest city to our Ecuador farm. So up next, I'm going to talk about the Novafita Wellness Center. It was previously known as the Novafita Clinic. I have been there personally. It's right on the farm. And this is the newly renovated Novavita. It's now called the Rejuvenation Spa. And you can see I'll show you photos of the old spa. It is on the same, Guayaquil. Yes, thank you, Francis. Yes, you can, if you want to fly down to Guayaquil, you can either fly from Miami or from New York. Most people fly from Miami. It's like a 3 hour flight, 2.5 hour flight from Miami, something like that. It's not far. And this is the newly renovated Rejuvenation Spa. It welcomes everybody. It's open to everyone. You don't even have to be a member to go. So if I were living in the US, I'd totally be going to this place once a year, and you'll see why. This is the new website. You can go out and check out the new website. It's beautiful. Please give me some likes if you're going to go check out the spa. I'll show you what kind of treatments they have. And when I was there, before I tell I was there, I'm going to have to tell Francis Fuller's story. And Francis is right here listening. And it's amazing. This is Francis Fuller. She's my upline. She's the lady. We call her the queen because she's the lady who actually brought Young Living to Asia back in 2003 when we had SARS. And she had an amazing story. She would tell her story too. If you want to see her story, if you want to listen to her story, give me some love. And then I'll tell her own personal story. It's a pretty crazy story, you know? So she was actually just traveling to Singapore for a holiday. She had friends there. And so she decided and everybody was in mask. It's just like the pandemic that we had. Well, currently still in Hong Kong, but previously in the US, everybody was in mask. In Asia, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Malaysia. And she was like, how come everybody's in mask? And back then, mask wasn't mandatory. And she was like, why do you want to do that? And then her friend said, but aren't you afraid to get SARS? She goes, I've got thieves. I'm not afraid. And so she invited her friends, and her friends invited her friends, and to invite them into her hotel room so that she can tell them about thieves and all the other oils that she's been using. And obviously they all signed up, and one thing led to another. She decided maybe I should stay in Singapore, and that's how she brought Young Living into Singapore. My enroller is in Singapore. My enroller, one of my best girlfriends, her name is Patricia. And that's how I met Francis. So when my friend Patricia signed me up, she was also just starting. So when I had questions, and I have a lot of questions, and when I had questions, I would email Francis Fuller. Back then, I can't remember if we had WhatsApp. So I would email Francis Fuller and ask her, and she would reply. She always gives me really good replies. And then later on, so this is how the story went, right? So because I was emailing her nearly every day, because I was researching the products myself, and then obviously I would have questions. And I'm kind of the detective, as you probably would be able to know in my past 3 classes, that I have found all these information. I'm a detective. She calls me her detective. So I would be like investigating and finding out all of this information. And then when I have questions, I would ask her. So we stayed in touch quite closely since 2011. 2011, starting March, I started emailing her nearly every week, and we were emailing back and forth. And then in July, and I remember Patricia was building her new house in Singapore, and she invited me and my children to go over and spend summer in Singapore. And then I go, oh, yeah, sure. So, because that's how we met through our children. And so we were planning to go, my kids get off school in June, get off for summer holiday in June. So I was planning to go there in June. And Frances was also planning to go to Ecuador in June. So she was supposed to go home from Ecuador at the end of June and to meet. So I was buying my air ticket and planning it around the time when Frances Fuller would be back into Singapore from Ecuador. Okay. So when she was in Ecuador, she was also emailing me. Okay. And then I remember I booked air tickets, blah, 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 and all that, and planned all and arranged all the planning with Patricia. And then suddenly Frances sent me an email and said, she sent me an email and said, Joanne, I had injured my spine. I will not be able to come back to Singapore yet. I actually jumped on the trampoline and pulled my, I don't know, what do you call it? Her spine compression. I just remember the vocabulary. So she injured her spine. Okay. She injured her spine. She couldn't move. And then she told me that the doctor said that I will have to be in a body cast. And I will show you photos. So this was Frances Fuller, the before and the after. I took these photos from Frances' Facebook page. And this was Frances jumping on the trampoline. Frances said she walked into, this is Gary's house on the Ecuador farm. And she walked by the trampoline. Obviously, it's Jacob's and Joseph's. And she said, wow, that looks like fun. Let me get on it. And note that Frances Fuller was already, 65 back then? Something like that, 63. And, if you have young living in your house, if you have young living in your life, you feel like you're invincible. You feel like you can do anything, right? So she went on the trampoline and she jumped. And this moment she was jumping. The next moment she was going, she couldn't move. And they had to carry her down from the trampoline and carried her to the clinic. You were 68. Okay, thank you, Frances. You were 68. Can you imagine? 68. And she thought she was 12. Anyway, so she injured her back and they brought her into, Frances, should I bring you online so that you can tell your own story? I think I should do that. It's probably more fun for you to tell it. But I don't know how to do this on the Facebook Live in my computer. Oh, okay. Well, you can keep correcting me in the comments because I can see the comments. So she went on they brought her to the hospital. They put her on an ultrasound or some sort of scan thing. And then they found an injury on her spine and she couldn't move. And the doctor said that she needs to be in a body cast. And she probably won't be able to move in like 6 months, something like that. I remember it was pretty crazy. And so I remember she emailed me. She said, I'm now lying on bed and they pop up my computer. That's how I can send you. I think the next time I can send you an email, it will be next week. I don't know when I can recover, when I can get back home. So I'm going to be stuck here for a while. So that was like the first email that I got from her. So Patricia and we have to change my flight plans, right? So I moved my flight to July. But I really needed to know when I can change because I was buying this ticket that can like change many times or something. So anyway, so she kept me posted. And I recall she said, eventually fractured both sides of the second lumbar vertebra. Okay, thank you very much, Frances. This is so wonderful. Okay, so I remember so this was actually, I think it's a pretty serious injury, right? Because she couldn't move. And they said that they can put her in a body cast, or Gary said, well, I had the same injury, or if you trust me, we can do something similar to what I did. So Frances said, yes, Gary, I trust you. So they went back to the Novafita and Frances Fuller had treatments done, and the treatments were pretty incredible because I remember that it was very private. Yes, yes, this is my recollection, right? Frances, this is my recollection as a new Young Living user, right? I haven't even started building back then. I just joined Young Living 6 months, okay? And I've been getting all this information from Frances. And she was retelling her, keeping me posted of her injury and her progress through email, because I was supposed to go meet her in Singapore. So she had to keep me updated, because so that I can properly arrange my flight with my 2 small children. My kids were 5 and 2. So yeah, they were 5 and 2. So if you have and I was just going by myself. So it was a stressful time, It was the first time I traveled with my 2 kids, just by myself but Patricia is over there in Singapore to pick me up. So it's all good. And anyway, so I remember that they were using a lot of sacred frankincense. There was a lot of ivy. And then Frances Fuller had to wear one of those hospital gowns. And, you don't actually wear much under that hospital gown, so that the back can be open, so that Gary and the doctor who was at the clinic can work on her. And she would have to, do you guys know how an epidural works? Yeah, it was an epidural, right? And so, and amazingly, remember this person supposedly Frances was supposed to be in this body cast for 6 months and probably may never be able to walk again. I remember that very, very vividly. The doctor said, you may not be able to walk again. And I was like, wow, oh shit, this is serious, right? Ooh, excuse the language. And so she was keeping us updated. And then she was telling me that she's standing, right? And then I'm now typing this, standing up. I can feel like I can stand now. And I was like, what? And then the next week she says, now I can sit, while standing feels better. Sitting puts a lot of pressure on it and it's very uncomfortable. And then the next email, she was telling me, oh, I'm on Silverzyme and BLM. Back then we did not have Agilis. I'm on SuperCal and MegaCal and Silverzyme and 4 times the Silverzyme and 5 times or 5 times MegaCal. And there was just a ton of supplements that she was taking, and she was taking a ton of it. She was taking instead of following the bottle instructions, she was taking 5 or 6 times, right? And as a newbie, I was like, okay, right? I was just listening. And as if just like how you guys are now listening to my story. And 1 week passed and 2 weeks passed, and I was worried for her. But she seems like very good spirit. And I remember she said, oh, I asked my daughter to fly down to help me, to take care of me. She's a nurse, so she knows what to do. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. And then 1 day passed, 2 weeks passed, and 3 weeks passed. And she said, I think they said I'm ready to go home. I'm like, what? Yeah, now I can walk. And now I'm and she keeps telling me what she was doing. And as a newbie, I had no idea what she was talking about. She was telling me about all these supplements, and she was talking to me about essential oils, infusions, And so I booked my flights. She was ready. She said, I booked my flight. I'm so grateful for my Young Living check. I think she just made, maybe you just made diamond, Frances, back then. Or you were platinum, or you just made diamond. I can't exactly remember. I think you just made diamond, because I remember 2010 was the year that, you probably weren't even diamond yet, because Young Living Singapore has not even opened yet, right? Young Living Singapore opened in October 2011, because that October, I went down and met Gary for the first time. And I remember you made diamond after Young Living Singapore opened. So you must have been platinum. And I remember you told us you're very grateful for the platinum check, because then you have a choice to sit at the first class in the airplane, and you have the choice to be even injured in Ecuador and your business, and you can still run your business. I remember that very, very vividly. And I thought, and remember, I was probably senior star. I just signed up my first member in May. So I probably was still just a distributor, not just a distributor, but I haven't even started thinking about it. But I remember when Frances Fuller told me that she feels so blessed to have this Young Living business, and that because she is injured and stuck in Ecuador, she can still work on her business. Really? Is it my connection or is everybody else okay? So let me repeat. So I remember Frances Fuller telling me, well, in the email, how blessed she felt that she can be working on her business remotely, even when she's injured and stuck in Ecuador, like the other end of the world, right? Compared to working a job, right? Can you imagine if you have a job and then you took a holiday and then you got injured and then you're stuck there for like a month? You're going to be fired by the time you get back, right? I don't know if that works, how it works in the US, but in this part of the world, yeah, you'd be fired. And so she was away for like a whole month. And then I remember she saying how blessed she has to have this check that can pay for a first-class air ticket to go home, because with her situation, with how she is physically, it would be very, very difficult for her to be sitting in coach with that kind of injury. So she get to lie down flat on a flat bed on the plane. And it was very quiet in the first class. And it was just a big blessing. And I remember, wow, I want to do that. And I remember when she was, she used to go to, well, Frances now lives in Bali, and she used to go there a lot. She would travel and she would tell me that, well, I'm going to go and help some people in the village. I'm going to bring my oils because they have this an injury or sickness, and I'm going to give them as donation. I'm going to teach them how to use the oils, and then I can donate my oils to them because I have this Young Living check and I can afford to donate. And I remember being a beginner of the user, right? Being a beginning user. And I felt like, wow, if I can do that one day, afford to give away oils to help other people, how amazing that would be, right? That would be amazing. Because back then I was financially very, very tight, and I couldn't really see into the future how I can earn a big living or earn a good living. I couldn't see it. And I didn't know that she was giving me a lot of glimpse into the kind of life that I could have. And I think that really slowly changed the way I see Young Living, not only as a health, but also as an opportunity. Yes, 42 hours of travel from Ecuador, Guayaquil, all the way to Singapore, because you have to transit, different. It actually takes me like 36 hours to go to Ecuador from Hong Kong. And Singapore is a little bit down south. So she has to go through like Japan and then go to Singapore. Anyway, so after 4 weeks, after 4 weeks, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, she was on her way back to Singapore. And I remember that I booked a flight to go to Singapore the day before she arrived so that I can go and welcome her, pick her up in the airport, because I felt like she has really helped me through those few months when every time when I sent an email to her, she would reply to me either right away or latest the next day. And she would always tell me where to find information. And I'm very grateful, right? And I want to show my gratitude. And I remember Patricia is also very grateful for Frances. So I arrived and I settled my kids into Patricia's home. And then I remember Frances arrived at a midnight flight or 11:30 at night. And Patricia said, let's go pick her up. I go, okay, she'd be so happy to see you, Joanne. And I go, okay, that was the first time I met Frances in person. And if you have ever been to Singapore airport, actually the meet and greet area in the Singapore outside customs, they have glass doors. So you can actually see into the luggage pickup area. So I was standing there with Patricia, and I was expecting an old lady. She said she's 68, right? She was 68. I was expecting an old lady in a wheelchair, okay, coming out. Like, old and frail and fragile. Instead, and then Frances, I remember, Frances, you know about this part I told you. And Patricia was going, see, that's Frances, right? Looking through the glass, sliding glass doors. And I go, huh? What? Isn't she supposed to be in a wheelchair? And not only was she not old and frail, she was bright. Her hair was perfectly done. And I remember she was in a t-shirt and like pants. And she came out. And I was like, what's going on? And she goes, and Patricia said, I don't know, ask her yourself. I'm like, huh, what? I was totally expecting an old frail lady who just injured herself, right? In a wheelchair being pushed and having somebody else push the luggages. To my surprise, the glass door opens. She walked through the glass door. Somebody was helping her with her luggages. She came out. She goes, hello, Joanne. So nice to finally meet you. And the first thing I said was, oh, wow, you smell like sacred frankincense. And she goes, because I gave her a hug, and she just, when the glass door opened, all I could smell was sacred frankincense, right? And it just came out of nowhere. And I said, wow, you smell like sacred frankincense. I gave her a hug. And she goes, of course, I've got it running through my veins. I will always remember that. I will never forget that. Oh my God, it's been 11 years ago. It felt like yesterday. And she goes, of course, I've got it running through my veins. And we just laughed. And I said, how come you can walk? I thought you'd be in a wheelchair. She goes, well, actually, my kind of injury, it's better for me to walk instead of sit. Sitting actually makes me very uncomfortable. And I've been sitting for 36 hours or something like that, right? And so so we sent her home, and then we settled her in, and she had us open her suitcase and take out all her supplements. I remember she had a suitcase full of supplements, line it all out. And I remember Patricia wrote down what she needed to take and started organizing stuff for her. And because Frances Fuller was living alone back then in Singapore. And the next day, and I went to visit her again. She said, come, Joanne, come tomorrow. I'll teach you about everything you want to know. And I remember it was very funny. And I remember the next day I said, are you sure? Don't you want to rest? She goes, oh, you fly all the way from Hong Kong to learn from me. Of course, you're welcome to come back. So the next day I went back, and she sat there for like 2 hours teaching me about the Complan, about essential oils, about hormones, about everything she knew. So I'm very grateful. Thank you, Frances, for that amazing story. And the thing is, I think, honestly, I think if I had not witnessed Frances' story, this amazing healing story, I would not believe Young Living as much as I do now. Like I did back then, Like I think this story really was the big, gigantic epiphany and really a true story that really allowed me to believe in everything Young Living. Honestly, really, I think that is true. That is the first. That's probably like the grounds for my belief. I have not yet met Gary in person back then, okay? Everything that I knew about Gary back then was from Frances or from my own research. And fast forward another five months, I met Gary in person, and then my life changed. So I actually don't have my own story in this whole 14 classes, because this whole 14 classes is about Young Living and about Gary. I'm open to sharing my own story after all of this, but let's go back to Young Living. And so this actually, Frances Fuller's experience really, really helped me, yes, believe in Young Living and Young Living products and the company because of what happened to her, what she went through. And well, this is Frances' book, and she did mention, so this is the CT scan indicated the fracture of the side, both sides of my second lumbar vertebra, compressed 30%. And I don't know, Frances, you can tell us in the comments where they can find your book. It's a story about Frances and her life. It's pretty amazing. She now lives in Bali, and she has a wellness center there. I think it's open to public. It's open to everybody. If you want to find this center, I think it's called the Luke Fuller Life Center. Message Frances and go follow her. She's amazing. She does a lot of education. She's a wealth of knowledge. And so, right, day one, right? And then day two, the doctors say that I must have a full body cast since I will not consent to surgery. I remain flat on my back. The body cast is scheduled. Thank you, Frances, for putting the Fuller Life website. They come to take me downstairs in a wheelchair. I tell the attendants I require a stretcher. They leave. My body cast is rescheduled because they wanted her to put her in a wheelchair. She said, I don't want to sit up. I want to lie down, right? And she's 68 and she's a fiery lady. So she tells her mind. She gets what needs to be done. And so on day 3, the podcast is scheduled for the afternoon. No one comes to take me downstairs. Day 4, Gary Young comes to tell me the treatment the 7 orthopedic surgeons have mapped out. immediate surgery and body cast for 3 months. They warn that every hour I delay the surgery, my chances of ever walking again are reduced. My heart tells me not to have surgery. However, that does not appear to be a viable option. Here I am in Ecuador and no way to get home to Singapore. Gary tells me the recommendations. He stands next to the bed, holding my hand and looking into my eyes as he speaks. After he described the recommended treatment, we continue to look at each other, never breaking eye contact. He takes a deep breath and says he previously sustained the same fractures. And I'm not going to print out everything that Frances Fuller wrote in the book, but you know the results. She has recovered, and I picked her up from the airport, so I am the witness of her recovery. So if you want to know the rest of the story in detail, you have to get the book. Anyway, so that was Frances Fuller's story, and this is mine. So these are actually my live blood analysis photos. This is the live blood analysis. This is my dry blood analysis. So the live blood analysis, this was the before, and this was the after. Isn't that interesting? So the before, well, these are red blood cells. They're supposed to be round and a little bit darker like here. So that means that they have nutrients, and this is much lighter in color. They're not as round. It means that they don't have as much oxygen. Oh, you have an ebook too. Well, you'd all have to find Frances to get her book. And these are photos of my live blood analysis, the before and the after. And then this is dry bloods. And according, and this is pretty amazing, these dried and live blood analysis, they can actually tell everything. As I said in the first class, that Gary has become such an expert on this. And Gary has taught Tamara, and Gary has also taught Crystal Parrott how to do this. And when I was there, my first time, it was the doctor who worked at the clinic at the Young Living Wellness Center who did my test for me. And I remember she said that I have candida. And I remember that she put me on Thieves' IV for 3 days because I have quite a lot of candida. And I will share what I did. So before I went to Ecuador, I always have a slight candida issues. I had eczema, and every time when I took detoxime, my ear here would open up and bleed, and then the corner of my mouth would also have the eczema patch, and then it would bleed, and every time when I took detoxime, and every time when I put Digize on my belly, I would have a rash. And that was 2012 was the first time I went to Ecuador. These photos are from 2012. So, and then all they did was they put me on a 3-day Thieves' IV. And then the 4th day I had frankincense. So I had a frankincense IV, and this was the photo of the packet. This was taken in 2013 because I went there twice, but these photos were taken 2012 and 2012, 2013, it doesn't matter. Something like that. Doesn't matter. Something like that. I can't remember. Okay. So this was my dry blood analysis. And the first time I went, she was speaking in half Spanish, half English. I couldn't really understand. But the second time I went with my team. I went with other gold leaders of my team. And I had Crystal Parrott who did the lab for me. And because she spoke English, it was much easier to understand. But I remember I went there 2 years back to back. So 2012 and 2013, if I remember correctly. No, it was 2013 and 2014. It was 2013 and 2014 because 2013 we just opened. So yes, this was taken the first time. I went on my own, and 2014 I went with my team. And because I remember we just opened, and when I went back to Hong Kong, I had Gretchen's husband saw me and said, "What did Joanne do? She looked like she's in her 20s, and I was 43, I think. I was 43, 42. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, she looked 10 years younger. What did she do? Where did she go?" And Gretchen told her, well, she went to Ecuador. And it was indeed pretty amazing. It was life-changing. So I remember the second time Crystal actually could tell. When Crystal saw my blood, she said, "Oh, you're fine. You're actually pretty healthy. You don't have bacteria. You don't have viruses. Your blood cells are very healthy, very vibrant, a lot of oxygen. Because I was really watching my diet and watching my lifestyle. Because when I first started with Young Living in 2011, I wasn't there at my optimal health. And with this opportunity of Young Living, I started really focusing on my health, especially Francis Fuller is a gigantic health advocate on diet and lifestyle. So I was really, really positively influenced. So I was really looking at a lot of what I was doing with my body, right? And I understand as a mother, if we do not take care of our own body, our children cannot be healthy and our family cannot be healthy. So I really focus on myself, especially after being in Ecuador, and they gave me a protocol. So anyway, I went back a year later and my blood was very good. And I remember we had people with me, and she was looking at their life blood analysis, and I remember they could actually tell when she looked at. So I think Claire would be okay for me to talk about it because she openly talks about it in the Chinese class too. So when they were looking at Claire's dry blood analysis, she could actually tell. I remember Crystal turned around and said to Claire, "Well, Claire, did you have an injury on your left knee and your right pelvic too?" She goes, "Yeah." "And you have pain. You still have pain." She goes, "Yes. How did you know?" And then she explained, "Well, I can see it here. Da, 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 da." And we're like, what? She could actually see that she sustained injury in her knee and she still has pain in her pelvics, and she can tell which side of it was. It was crazy, you know? And then they joked that Gary was so good at it. If you show him your blood and your life blood analysis and your dry blood analysis, he could actually tell when you lost your virginity. I don't know. I think it's a joke, but you know, it's scary. So anything is possible. So they said that they can actually tell a lot from your life blood analysis and your dry blood analysis. Obviously, it depends on the person who's giving the analysis, the technician. They need to be very, very experienced. And also, the live blood analysis and the dry blood analysis actually is a preventative measure that they say that whatever they can see in the blood will show up in a blood test in the Western doctor blood test 2 years later. So having this done is really, really important for health. And so this was my experience, and these are photos that I took. So this was me. Well, this was the old center. As you can see, this is the old one. There's a terrace out here. So we call it the Ivy Party. We call this the Ivy Party. This was, these photos were taken my first time. And this was me on my IV drip. And and this was in the rooms. This is a floral water bath. It's part of my treatment, the Ylang floral water bath. And you might recognize some of these people. And I think this is Sabina. And this is Karen. She's amazing. I remember all this amazing stories, miraculous stories that she told me on her Young Living journey. And that also really anchored a lot of my faith and trust and belief in Young Living products. Because when I went to these retreats and meet all these people, and they would share all these amazing stories. So if you decide to go to convention this month, in 2 weeks, if you're going to convention next week, please go when you're lining up. This is what I did when I was you know how in convention there are lines everywhere, right? You're lining to get into a general session, you're lining up to get lunch, you're lining up to register, you're lining up to buy stuff, to place your orders. So whenever you're in line, ask the person in front of you, "So what's your Young Living story?" And then ask the person behind you, "What's your Young Living story?" I guarantee you, this way you're going to collect 10 stories so that you can share them at home when you get home. And these stories will anchor that faith and that trust for you in your Young Living products. If you decided to build a business for it, if you decide to share, these stories will really, really help you. So collect stories. That's what I love to do. Every time when I go to a Young Living event, I collect stories. And then these are the stories that I can eventually tell all of you back, right? So beautiful place, heaven on earth. I know that Jacob actually calls it heaven on earth. I don't like the heat. Heaven on earth for me is Fort Nelson. Heaven on earth for the people who don't like the cold is Finca Botanica, right? Okay, really amazing. Okay, so yes, so I encourage you all to go to their website and take a look at what they offer. fly down there. It's not far. It's totally worth it. It's open to everybody. And you have to book the appointments. It's all on their website. It's life-changing. And so when I went there the first time and then the second time, I came back. I felt like I was 10 years younger. It's pretty amazing. Okay. All right. So we're towards the end now, and I'm going to share the story of copycats and how they did it. In fact, imitation is the highest form of flattery. I think all of us have heard that. And I would say yes to it, because I think when people like to copy us, it means that we're really good. And of course, if you Google imitation is the highest form of flattery, you're going to see other things like imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But I think it means that I'm not original or creative, or I'll just steal your ideas. Does that sound right? Right? So there were actually a few people who tried to copy what Gary did. And the reasons why there is copycats, the reason why they want to copy us was because they were not agreeing of what Gary was doing. They didn't understand why Gary had to spend all that money building farms, right? So going through that, back in 2004, there was already one person who left Young Living and opened his own essential oil company. That was 2004. So he went on and opened an essential oil company, and he did not agree to use the MLM network marketing model. He was actually the son, I don't remember his name. He was actually the son of one of the distributors, one of the members. He didn't have a job, so the mother asked Gary to hire him. And so Gary hired him to help him develop work in the lab. And to help, so Gary taught him how to analyze essential oils and taught him a lot about essential oils. And he didn't think that Gary needed to build farms. He felt that it's okay to just buy. So because back then, we did not grow all our own oils, right? Gary had to buy a lot of the oils from brokers. But because of his experience and his testing ability, as you have heard from the second class, what he learned from Dr. F.A. Casabianca on how to test the essential oils and all the education that he had done, and learning from all the doctors and in Egypt and in the universities. He has already developed a really good way to test oils, and because of his nose. So every batch of oils that Gary Young Living imported had to go through the Gary nose test, and then the GCMS and the RMS and the third-party testing. And back then, Young Living would still send our oils to F.A. Casabianca, and he would test them for Young Living. And if it goes through if he gets his okay, then we can use it. And of course, we all know that we have been out of valor for many, many years, back in 2013, because we were out of black spruce. And we had been out of tansy, and we've been out of peace and calming. We've been out of so many oils because Gary would not approve a lot of the oils that we got from brokers. But some people who worked with Gary did not agree that we need to hold the standard that high, right? And now that they have gotten the knowledge and the contacts of the brokers, they believe they can open their own company and make their own oils. It's just like in the first class and the second class, I already showed everybody how I can easily open a apothecary a la Joanne and sell my own essential oils, right? And they can even be organic, right? And they can even be therapeutic grade, right? But I would never do that because I do not have the D. Gary Young Research Institute to back me up. I do not have an IRLMS to back me up. I don't know if the oils that I would never be selling would meet that requirement, because we ingest our oils. We put our oils in our products, in our Ning Red, in our detoxime, in our zinc, right? We put essential oils in everything that we're ingesting. If I do not know the quality, how can I do that? Okay, fine. If I'm just going to open an essential oil company to sell oils to put topically, to diffuse, yeah, I do that. But So you get an idea, right? So that's why one person actually came out and opened a company. It's called Rocky Mountain. It's a retail company. You can order online back in 2004. Eventually, Rocky Mountain merged with another essential oil company. You can easily find them online. They have something that is similar to our thieves. They have something that is similar to our stress away. They have something that is very similar to the sleep oils that we have. But are you going to buy? I don't know. I actually have a member who is a detective like me. And when he started with Young Living, actually his wife started with Young Living, and he was very obviously super skeptical. And of course, the wife started using it and he started using it and he found out, wow, this oil really works. So he started doing his research and he actually compared essential oils. He bought them from Rocky Mountain. He bought them from doTERRA. And then he compared them to the Young Living ones. I have no problem with people doing that because once they compare, they will know, right? So the funniest thing is my friend, the wife, eventually told me after I think 6 months, she goes, my husband tested out all the oils. He tested out all the other brands that you told him to go test for. And now he's only using Young Living. The funniest thing. And I remember he said that the doTERRA one, he bought them once and he said, no, these are not the same thing. He bought the Rocky Mountain one. He tried them on also, but he said, no, the Young Living ones are really better. So that is some personal experience. Okay. I actually have never used Rocky Mountain. I have never used doTERRA. Somebody has gifted me doTERRA oils. I have opened them. I have smelled them, but I have closed them back. Okay. I've put them back into the box. And I think we have leaders who use them to compare. I don't see the need. I will tell you, so the Rocky Mountain story was like that. So he used to be the son of a distributor, and he worked with Gary. And then after, I think 3 years, if I remember correctly, he decided to come out and open his own company, his own essential oil company. And then the doTERRA story was when Gary went to open the farm in Ecuador. So Gary went down to Ecuador for 5 years, right? So when was that? If I remember correctly, it was 2005, right? And it was from the last lesson, 2005 to 2010, he was in Ecuador. So while he was in Ecuador, note the date of these 5 people decided to go and open their company. It was during the time when Gary was in Ecuador. And when Gary was in Ecuador, and I will have to tell a story of HK Lin. This was a story that HK told me himself. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about HK Lin. And it was Dr. HK Lin, he now is with Young Living. When I met him, he was an independent researcher in the University of Oklahoma. And he did cancer research. Let me stop share. He did cancer research and, how does this look now? Okay, he did cancer research and his story goes, I'm going to tell HK Lin's story. His story goes that his mother passed away from cancer. So he dedicated his life to doing cancer research. So he was searching for something that can cure cancer, if you would use that word. And so he read some article and something about frankincense and cancer. So he called up Young Living. Of course, he looked online and he called Young Living. He knew that Young Living was selling frankincense. And he was curious, so he called Young Living. And back then, Gary was in Ecuador. So somebody else was connected to HK. It was somebody named David. And he was invited to go to Utah to meet with this David. So HK Lin went to Utah, went to Young Living, and he told me that he was waiting to meet with the person. And then he heard he was going in there to meet with the person, and this person wanted to meet with him, and he started showing him some presentation about frankincense and about cancer. But HK Lin said, I wasn't interested in what he was saying. I was a researcher. He didn't need to tell me what I need to do. And whatever he's saying, I didn't really remember. I just wanted to be there to get my oil. I just wanted to be there to get my frankincense. You don't have to tell me all of that. I don't understand. I don't care. I just want to get my oil so I can do my own research so that I can publish my own paper. And then he said after that meeting, he left and he waited in the waiting room. And then afterwards, he heard some people fighting. He heard some people fighting. And then afterwards, he was waiting for his oil. He heard some people fighting. And then he saw this David that he just met with stormed out of the meeting room. And then he got his oil, and then he took his oil, he brought it back to the University of Oklahoma, and he researched it. And he had an amazing result. He saw how under the microscope, the frankincense would engulf the cancer cells. So he was very excited. This was the first time he saw something like this, so phenomenal. So he published a paper. If you look up the paper, you will find it online, okay? It's under his name, Dr. H.K. Lin. And so he continued to do the research. And when he finished all his oils, he tried to contact the person again by email, but he did not get a reply. After a few months, he received a phone call. After a few months after he's published the paper, he received a phone call from the person that he met with. His name was David. David has invited him to go to Taiwan to present his papers, presents this frankincense cancer research paper. And of course, as a scholar, when you are invited to present your research paper, you're very excited. This is exactly what he told me. He was very excited. He didn't know about what company and whatnot. He didn't understand. He's not in the industry. He is a researcher. He's a scholar. He's a professor. He teaches in a university. And so when he was invited to Taiwan, and he remember David asked him, you're Taiwanese. Do you have any contact in Taiwan that can help us set this up? And H.K. Lin's sister was still living in Taiwan. And so HK connected this David with his sister, and his sister helped booked the venue, set up the event. And because HK is Taiwanese, so he speaks Mandarin, okay? So they set it all up, and they paid for the air ticket for HK Lin to fly to Taiwan. He was happy to have an opportunity to go home and visit his family too, and talk and present his own study, his own finding to his own people. Do you know how amazing that is? So he got off the flight, and he was surprised how there were like banners opening up. Welcome, Dr. H.K. Lin, to present your cancer research results with frankincense essential oils, and all in Chinese and English, right? And all these banners and all these things. And he was like, and flowers and photos and he was like, what's going on? So he just smiled and he followed, he went along with it. And then he did his presentation, and there were a lot of people and there were a lot of clapping, and he was very excited. He did it all in Mandarin. And then he wanted to get frankincense. He wanted to do more research. So he asked David, do you have that frankincense that you let me try the first time? Can I have some more? Because I want to continue to do my research. So this David gave him a bottle of frankincense. He took the frankincense and he went home. He went back to Oklahoma and he continued with his research. However, this research did not have the same results. This frankincense doesn't work. It doesn't behave the same way as the frankincense that he was using the first time. So he was like, what is going on? Why does it not work? Did I have a mistake last time? What went wrong? Am I doing it wrong this time? What went wrong? Or is it not the same frankincense? He had no idea there were so many different species of frankincense. So we're going to talk about frankincense later. Well, in 2 weeks later. So he had no idea there were different frankincense species. Well, he wasn't a frankincense expert, right? So he was very discouraged. And so he stopped his research with frankincense and cancer. He went on to doing other things. Well, okay, I remember he tried to call this David again, but he couldn't find him. And he didn't get any more replies. So he had no way to contact this David again. And so and that means he had no way to get the frankincense again. So he went on to do other stuff. And I think 1 or 2 years later, he received a phone call from a man in the UK. And this guy, his wife was dying of cancer. And this guy was doing his own research and found Dr. H.K. Lin's research on frankincense. So he looked H.K. Lin up and he called him. And he said, I really need to find that frankincense that you were talking about because my wife is dying of cancer, because I believe that this may be able to help her because my children are still very young. So, out of the heart and of HK having her own mother pass away because of cancer, HK decided, maybe I can reach out. And then he looked back at the old frankincense. I remember the company was called Young Living. So he called the Young Living customer service hotline and told his story. Well, my name is Dr. H.K. Lin. I work at the Research Institute. I work at the University of Oklahoma. I'm doing frankincense research. Before I got this frankincense from you, and then I got it. It didn't work. Is there any way I can get that frankincense again? And then the customer service representative said, okay, I'll take down all the messages and we will get back to you. And after a few hours, Gary Young called. After a few hours, Gary Young called him and invited him over and sent him, Gary Young invited him and also sent him frankincense and also sent this man the frankincense in the UK. Well, eventually the wife passed away due to other complications and not for the cancer. But that really reconnected H.K. Lin with Gary, okay? And that was when H.K. got his third batch of frankincense. And now this frankincense worked again. So later on, Gary also connected H.K. Lin with Dr. Suhail from Oman. And so H.K. Lin and Dr. Suhail actually became very good friends. They worked very closely. Dr. Suhail actually worked on a lot of cancer cases back in Oman. He's a doctor, he's a medical doctor. And that was how I met H.K. Lin, was from, I can't remember how I met him, but he came to Hong Kong. So I spent a whole day with him and we became friends. And it's always very good to see him. And he's so passionate about what he's doing. And I'm so happy that we have H.K. Lin back as Chief Science Officer. He loved Gary. He knew Gary's heart. So, and he worked really closely with Gary for a very long time. So we're in very, very good hands. I actually saw something and I saw an herb that is really good for teeth and I sent it to him the other day and he replied. So anyway, so that was H.K. Lin's story, okay? And so I learned that story back in 2013. So it really helped me understand a lot of Young Living's history. I guess we all know who he actually spoke for, the company that he was speaking for when he was in Taiwan. In fact, doTERRA started their market in Taiwan. They did not start their market in the US. They started their market in Taiwan. So they're very big in Taiwan because they've been there for a long time. And so another story that I would like to tell with the copycats is that when this is the story from Dr. Benjamin Perkins. And Dr. Benjamin Perkins he developed aroma freedom technique. You can look him up. The aroma freedom technique, I highly recommend. It's very good. It's very easy to do to remove emotional obstacles. It's very useful. So personal story from Dr. Benjamin Perkins. Look him up, aroma freedom technique, okay? So Dr. Perkins told me his own story was that he was obviously in Young Living a long time ago. And when Gary was in Ecuador, he left his company to be taken care of by a handful of people, right? By a handful of people. And the handful of people started going around and doing their own marketing research while Gary was in Ecuador. They would go and do home visits and ask the builders. This was back in 2009. Right? Okay. 2007, 2005, 2005, 2006, 2007. It was back in 2006 or 7. And they would go around and do home visits for builders. And Dr. Perkins remembered that one time this David was in his home. They were doing an event. And they would ask, okay, Benjamin, if you were to change something for Young Living, what would you change? If you were to promote something, a product, how would you promote it? We're doing this, we're trying to revamp Young Living, and we're thinking of, doing more programs, different promotional items, different marketing strategies. So we would love to know how we can improve Young Living. So, but Dr. Benjamin Perkins said, oh, you know what? Our oils work so well for mothers, and we still have not opened that marketplace yet. I think it would be wonderful if we can come up with a Dr. Mom kit, come up with something that is called Dr. Mom, because, every family, the mother is actually the doctors of the family, because when anything happens to your children, they always go to mom first. It's always mommy. It would be wonderful if we can do a Dr. Mom's kit. Later on, this person took this Dr. Mom kit and used it as one of the biggest marketing launch in his own company. I heard the story from Dr. Perkins himself, okay? And then I know a lot of Young Living old timers, because I travel a lot with them and I ask questions, And then I heard this other story from another leader in Young Living. I heard this from Jill Young. She's an RCD. And Jill told me that, of course, I'm not going to go over to that company. Do you know what happened? They would send us packages and leave them outside. I don't know where, quote unquote, I don't know where they got our address. I would receive packages of their products outside our door, and they would be shipped to our homes. So they have taken our member addresses, they have taken our information, and they're contacting each one of us, and they're promising rewards and incomes and everything. Of course, I'm not going to do that. What kind of person I would be if I were to do that? That whole box, I just threw it away. It was such an insult to my character, right? So I've heard a lot of these stories in Young Living. I came in afterwards. I came in 2011 when the other company was already formed. I never had that experience. And I always joke that I know that in some countries, big leaders have been poached over to the other company and promised a lot of different things, but I don't know if they've been successful. I wish them luck. Gary would used to say, well, show them the door and don't let the door bang their butt on the way out. That is what Gary would reply to. And then I would also like to, there is some hearsay story that I can tell. I heard that there was one lady who she told Mary that she has to retire because she wants to go home and take care of her family. And Gary and Mary, of course, being so family oriented, Mary would be totally okay with it, right? And Mary actually wrote a check, a retirement check of, I don't know how many, 5 digits or something, and give her so that she can go and take care of her family. And this person later on is one of the team that opened the new company. And then there also another story is that the general counsel was kept in Young Living for 5 years because of statute of limitation. You can only sue within 5 years, and you cannot sue after 5 years. So that lawyer actually stayed in Young Living 5 years after the new company was formed, and he left 5 years later. And every time when the Youngs wanted to sue the new company, he would say, oh, you don't have a case here. You don't have a case, and dragged it on until it was past the statute of limitation. Okay. So if you looked online and see that court case, you see that Young Living lost due to technicalities, because it's past statute of limitation, it's past 5 years. So it is not because it did not happen. It was because it was past 5 years when when they were sued. Okay. So this is something that I really wanted to clarify. And it was very important to clarify this. I feel like because there's so much misunderstanding around the story, how this went about. And there were 5 people who went on to start their own company. The reason why they started their own company was because David did not believe that Gary need to spend all that money to invest in farms, because you need to spend a lot of money to invest in farms. And he was proposing that you can actually just buy the oil from third party, from brokers, and you can save all that money. And Gary was very adamant, and I heard this from HK Lin, and Gary was very angry. He said, how can you say this? How can you tell me to close the farm in Ecuador and just buy the oils from third-party broker? It is not the same, because if we do not build our own farm, we will not have oils. And actually, he was so angry, he fired him at the spot. That is what I heard. Hearsay, guys, hearsay. So this is the story, and this is the truth, and there's a lot of truth to this. So I just want to clear out all that myth around the copycats and all of them. And I'm sure if you look up like the formula of thieves, there are a ton of other companies that use this thieves formula and say how amazing it is. But I have had people who have used them. They say they do not work as well. I don't know. I don't even want to waste my money on testing out something that I know will not be working as well as the one that I'm using. So the next class, next week, we'll talk about how Gary died. And then we will break 1 week after that, because that's convention week. So next week, we will talk about how Gary died. And stay tuned, and tell your friends, tag them, and tell them to come and watch the replay. And for now, if you have any questions, you can let me know in the comments. And I'm reading the comments. If not, just give me some more love. Give me the hearts. And I will see you next week. Okay? Bye-bye.